Hi, I am M. Roblin. I am about helping you seek out your potential, awaken to new possibility, zoom up and out from those problems, get a fresh perspective. Okay, let me ask you something. So, have you ever been in a meeting where somebody's repeatedly getting interrupted? How does it get handled? Did somebody call out the behavior in real time? How'd that land? What happened? And I guess what's most important in all of this is like what happened after. Was there a behavior change? Yeah. Look, I'm thinking about this in the spirit of this calling it out kind of series. Like this tool that we're often recommending, that research recommends we use, like call out behavior that is not additive or constructive to building an inclusive culture. And my experience is that in practice, it's actually really nuanced and subjective and complex and relational and culturally loaded. So I want to bring up an example, and I think this is a classic, but also it's one that came up recently with a client of mine. So I thought we could use that, and as I give the example and peel it back around how he approached the situation and also my recommendations, let's see how it's landing with you. And I really look forward to hear your questions, comments, reactions, and responses, and of course any other situations that you'd love for me to unpack. So in this case, my client, let's put him something like this, like pretty much industry expert, been with the organization a long time, runs a regional team, um, native English speaker. I think those seem relevant here. And he was the one called out in a regional meeting that was like a pretty big one with all hands on deck with a ton of agenda items to go through. And he was called out by the person that he was interrupting directly. And that person, just demographically, so you can get the sense, is younger, much younger, like pretty early career, also pretty new to the organization, female, also non-native English speaker. So you can kind of start to get the picture of what this was looking like. It was a little past midway in the meeting, and she expressed with a lot of emotion something like, stop interrupting me. You need to stop interrupting me. And if you interrupt me again, I am getting off of this call. And so it was quite so when he contacted me after this meeting, he had already booked in a one-to-one that he was going to have with this individual, and he was just needing to align on how to best manage this. And I should also say that this leader is super committed to building an inclusive culture in his organization. That's important to hear. So yeah, what would you do if you got called out like that? Yeah, I mean, he was quick with me to say, like, I feel bad. It like really wasn't my intention. We had like a long list of things to do, and like people kept going off of tangents, not just that individual, but he's like, people just kept going off track. So I felt like we needed to come back and stay aligned. And like, I really didn't mean it. So that's number one. And then number two, he's like, I actually kind of think she was a little out of line. Like, I mean, she had so much emotion, and I'm not really sure there's like that's appropriate in like that kind of a business meeting with all hands on deck to be that emotional. Like, I just don't think it served her that well. So he's like, I think those are the things that I'm going to bring up. What do you think? Does any of that sound familiar? Is that how you would approach it if you got called out? I mean, I completely understand where he's coming from, but after unpacking it, my recommendation for how to manage that one-to-one was very different than what he just suggested. Number one, let me just unpack that intention thing. Yeah, like a lot of times when we filter other people's behavior, we do it literally just like that, through behavior, through things we can see and hear them do. And sometimes when we're reflecting on our own behavior, we will do it through a lens of intention. It's like we maybe don't get quite so in the granular about what we said and did, and instead we're more focused on what our intention was. We can't really recognize the intention always in other people, but we can recognize it in our own. And so his response to say, well, it wasn't my intention to make her feel that way. Well, it's like, okay, it wasn't your intention, but you need to take responsibility for that. Yeah, your intention and the behavior, like there was a gap, and in fact, that behavior, how it landed on her, was to I mean, interrupting somebody is literally like the epitome, it's like, of making somebody feel unheard. You cut off her words multiple times. Like, that's how it landed for her. So we got to take some responsibility for that. Like, you can say in that one-to-one that wasn't your intention, but be careful, because when we go there, it's almost like we're bringing up a defensive wall and we're defending our behavior, as opposed to honoring that behavior had an impact on somebody. And if you're in a learning mindset and you're committed to that building that inclusive organization, that wall could actually be the barrier to learning, and it might even shut her down. So that was number one. And number two, about the outsized emotional impact, well, there's an invitation to observe that people who are, outsiders in an organization, so like people that are new. She had so many. I mean, I don't know deeply the culture of that team, but it's like, female in a more male-dominated team, newer to the company, age differential, like somebody who's younger than the average team member, somebody who speaks English as a non-native language, and having that meeting. There was like many variables there that meant that she's, probably not an insider in this organization all the time. And so as an outsider, typically you experience like lots of little things like this where it might have not just been being interrupted in that meeting. That might have just been like the bottle, the pressure being there, and it gets released. And so her expression of emotion is not because she's over emotional about being interrupted one or two times. It's the buildup of being interrupted so many times. Now, does that excuse her from growing her own emotional management? No, but this is about creating a space for your employees to feel seen and heard, and this is a great opportunity for you to listen. And so I invited him to go into this meeting with a couple of phrases in his back pocket. And one of them was, tell me more. And the other one was, what else? Tell me more. And what else? Oh yeah? What else? Oh, what else? And what else? And frankly, as we closed that meeting and he was about to go into this other one, he's like, I feel actually not confident at all. I feel quite uncomfortable. This is very different than the approach I'm comfortable with, which was much more about like educating her on how to stay in line, and recognize there's a lot of items to cover, and that not every voice needs to be heard in that meeting, and that she needs to be less emotional and all these educational moments, but instead to really be a listener. But he could see from the inclusive perspective that this was a different kind of approach that was going to be a much deeper conversation. And wow, was he pleasantly surprised. And they had a very powerful conversation, and he was shocked. He said he would have never imagined that using that what else, thinking of course she said everything she needs to say, and then he'd say it again, and there'd be more, and then there'd be more, and then there'd be more. And this actually did stem way deeper, across much further than this meeting, and it became a really great opportunity to really shift some things he hadn't considered yet. Yeah, tell me what's resonating with you, and how is this different or similar to your approach?